Wem sollen wir dieses Foto zeigen und wie geht's weiter?
Das erfahren wir jetzt. Herzlich willkommen in der Welt der interaktiven Geschichten. Ich bin Kiki und das ist mein heutiger Gast.
Gino!
Gino, hier wird fröhlich gepöbelt in der Bar. Okay, wir gehen dann mal raus, würde ich sagen.
Die heutige Folge wird unterstützt von
Alpengold, Oreo und ich glaube irgendwie Peanut Butter, also Erdnussbutter. Ich weiß nicht, es sind kyrillische Buchstaben. Ich kann dir also nicht sagen. Du bist? Ich dachte du... Ja, dann geh doch raus. Ah, danke. Mit Tür öffnen hat es nicht funktioniert, aber mit benutze. Verwende. Tür. Okay. Was können wir bloß tun? Jackson Square ist der Park, Polizeiwache. Waren wir schon? Voodoo-Museum. Da waren wir noch nicht, oder?
Doch, da ist die Mitarbeiterin.
Ach ja, doch, da waren wir.
Der eine ist nicht da.
Ja.
Hi. Look around.
Es sitzt immer so ein Trommler da.
Okay, thanks.
Ich weiß.
Gabriel cannot. That wouldn't be.
Ach so, ja, oder vielleicht zeigen wir ihr das.
Genau.
Warum auch nicht? Wir zeigen einfach jedem in der Stadt dieses,
Do you know anything about this?
No.
Also, das war kurz. Na gut, dann geh halt wieder. Das war sehr kurz. Wissen Sie was darüber? Nö. Ende des Gesprächs. Geh. Geh.
Mit dem Schild.
Gabriel cannot.
What?
Mit dem Schild, Kiki. Du hast gerade gelernt.
Was für ein Schild?
Also die Option nehmen, die nur ein Schild ist. Die Bewege-Option. Nochmal Rechtstaste? Meine ich? Mehr? Achso, ne, dann weiß er nicht.
Ne, das war eine Tür.
Ah,
ja,
das
das
Schild
ist.
ist West,
Das
Laden,
Schild
oder?
ist, ja.
Achso.
Das ist nur so.
So long.
Warte bitte.
Achso, okay. Dann nicht. Dann nicht mit dem Schild.
Nee,
Leute, bitte.
das geht doch gar nicht. So, Drugstore. Wo gehen wir denn hin?
Kannst du da weiter rechts, New Orleans? Ja.
Oh! Stimmt. Oma besuchen. Ja, das machen wir. Da waren wir noch nicht. Leute, besucht eure Omas, solange ihr sie noch habt. Ding dong.
Gabriel, I'm so glad you stopped by.
Gut, ich hab's aufgemacht.
Aha,
Hingekriegt. Teilweise.
werde es.
Sorry it's been a while, Grandma.
Oh. Prost, Bierchen.
Not at all. Give us a kiss.
Das weiche Schokolade.
Now come and sit down. Tell me how you're doing.
Rede mit Oma.
Can we talk, Gran?
Of course, my boy. How can I help?
Alles.
What can you tell me about
Voodoo.
Voodoo? What an odd
Oma,
question,
erzähl doch
Gabriel.
mal.
Of course, you always were interested in monster movies and all that other weird stuff. You get that from your father and granddad. I don't know anything about it, dear. Of course, it was very big in New Orleans at one time, but you don't hear about it so much these days. Too much else in the world to worry about, I guess.
Die Schokolade ist übrigens mit Erdnussbutter und Oreo-Stückchen. Ich wollte es nur mal sagen. Schmeckt
Gut, dass ich das nicht probiert habe.
interessant.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
Oh, Gabriel, nothing. And I don't want to. I sometimes wonder what this world is coming to.
Tja,
What can you tell me about New
stimmt eine Menge.
Orleans?
New Orleans is very southern. Of course, though, not as much as it used to be when I was a girl. It's gotten much more influenced by the East Coast and that California stuff. Still, it hasn't changed as much as other places, I reckon. We've always been happy here.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
My goodness, boy. You've lived here all your life just like me. I can't tell you much that you don't already know.
Dann.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
St. John's Eve.
redet so intens.
Ja.
I remember when I was a girl, we always had a St. John's Eve Mass. The Mass was said at midnight, and we held candles. One time on the way home, we were waylaid by a large group of drunken revelers. They didn't hurt us, but I was frightened.
Oh.
My father was furious. We never went to St. John's Mass.
Nur wegen so ein
after
paar
that.
Betrunkene. Na gut.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I haven't celebrated it in years, Gabriel. Well, I'm sure there's still Mass in the more traditional churches, but I don't go.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what Gabriel sans cœur means?
Etwas ohne
Something
etwas.
without something, I think. My French is
Danke,
so
Oma.
rusty. I swear my mind is going.
It's okay, thanks. Tell me about yourself.
What?
Me? Oh, surely you have something more interesting to talk about.
Oh, come on, Gran.
All right, dear.
Ach, na gut.
What do you want to hear?
Oh, was machst du denn so?
What do you do all day?
You know how I love to knit and work in my garden? I also take long walks. It's the only way to keep an old body like mine from stiffening up.
You're not old.
Der ist so charmant.
Oh, don't be foolish. I'm older than the hills.
Tell me about before you met Granddaddy.
Well, you know I was born Rebecca Wright. My daddy owned a lot of land outside of town. We grew peas, corn, cotton, all kinds of things.
Jede Menge Sklaven.
It was a good childhood, but my father was very strict. He didn't much let me out of his sight.
Tell me how you met Granddaddy.
I met Harrison at a church revival. There was a traveling preacher back then, a big fella named Reverend Jim. I even remember his slogan, "Come to me to find your way." Your granddad was sitting right behind me and my girlfriend Alma, and at one point, old Reverend Jim was flinging his hair around with his fire and brimstone antics, and a piece of it, one of those small add-on do's for men, went flying off. I swear, Harrison and I were the only ones that noticed. We both started laughing to beat the band. Everyone looked at us like we were a couple of loonies. It was then I knew that he was from there.
Schön, wenn man sich gemeinsam über jemanden lustig machen kann.
How you feeling these days?
Fit as a fiddle, and don't you worry your head
Sehr
about
schön.
it.
Just tell me anything at all.
I had your father when I was 22. The doctors told me I couldn't have any more after him, so I'm afraid I spoiled him rotten.
Ist ja irgendwie süß.
Just tell me anything at all.
I never loved any man but your grandfather, and I never will.
Das ist süß.
Just tell me anything at all.
I hate to admit it, but I was a jealous little thing when your granddad and I were younger. I loved him so ferociously, and he did attract the eyes of the ladies, whether he wanted to or not.
Just tell me anything at all.
I get lonely sometimes, but I have lots of girlfriends in the neighborhood. I call one of them if I'm feeling blue.
Na dann.
Oh, nothing, never mind.
All right, dear.
Das ist immer sehr typisch, dass Spiele haben so Unterordner von
Ja,
Gespräche, ne?
Genau.
Und dann kommst du dann zurück zum Hauptordner irgendwie.
Das
ne?
stimmt, das stimmt.
Tell me about our family.
Who would you like
Yeah.
to hear about? Your granddad, your father, or your mother?
Unterordner, also ne.
Nee.
Harrison. Knight.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Your granddad immigrated to America when he was 21.
Aus Deutschland
He
wahrscheinlich.
worked his way through
vielleicht,
school,
ja.
met and married me, and we had your father, Philip.
Noch was?
Tell me something about Granddad.
Your granddad supported me and your father with bookkeeping. I'll tell you what, though. He hated every minute of it. Didn't really like bookkeeping one bit. Maybe that was why he had the worst luck with jobs. The nights he'd come home afraid to tell me he'd lost another. And I would tell him. It didn't matter to me. But he felt ashamed, Gabriel.
Oh ja. Was ist mit
Tell me
Papa?
about my father.
Your father was my only child. How we adored him.
Der ist gestorben, ne?
Philip suffered from terrible nightmares, just like your granddad did. They were 2 peas in a pod.
Ui.
Wir haben auch diese Albträume, Leute.
Ja.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Nein.
Harrison was only 36 when he died. Your father was 8 years old at the time. Your granddad was hit by a streetcar in the business district. Took me nearly a year to believe he was really gone.
Ui.
I'm sorry, Gran.
I know you are, dear.
Tell me about my father.
When Philip met your mother, it was love at first sight. They were married 2 weeks later. Never
Das
looked
war
at
aber
the girl
flott.
seriously until then. And he looked at plenty. You have your father's way with women, Gabriel. And your granddad.
Aha.
Ja.
Aha. Was denn hier mit Mama?
Tell me about my mother.
Your mother was Margaret Templeton when your father met her. She came from a very wealthy Creole family in New Orleans. She was beautiful and reckless. She was madly in love with your father, of course, but I also think she liked defying her family. Since you're so interested in family history these days, why don't you go by St. Louis Cemetery number 1 and visit the family tomb? It would be a sweet
Werden wir
gesture.
machen.
Maybe
Ja.
I will.
Noch ein bisschen mehr?
Tell me about my mother.
Your mother's family refused to give her money after the marriage. All she had left was a modest trust fund from a great aunt, who happened to like Philip. The remainder of your mother's trust fund became yours when she died. That's what you used to open your bookshop.
Voll gut investiert.
Macht der Oma doch.
You know, you get prettier every
Das ist
time
so
I see you.
süß.
You.
Aber warte mal, mach Harrison Knight. Dann müssen die alle beenden.
Ja.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Did you know that your granddad was a poet? He was. He wrote the most beautiful poetry for me when we were courting. I always thought he should have done something with that gift. But he was such a practical man. Didn't believe in
Vielleicht hat
chasing
er die auf
after
Deutsch geschrieben. Ne? Wir haben ja ein
Stimmt.
Tell me
Gedichtbuch
something
zu
about
Hause.
Granddad.
Dings.
Ja.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Über Opa nix mehr. Papa vielleicht.
Tell me about my father.
I wanted to just lay down and die when he and your mother were killed in that car crash when you were only 8. It was the thought of taking care of you.
Stimmt, immer wenn die 8 werden, ne?
The police say your father swerved off the road after being frightened by something. Perhaps a deer in the road or a wild cat.
Tell me about my father.
Your granddad wanted Philip to have a normal life. He was obsessed by that thought. He pushed Philip to go to law school. Philip was driven to art. He painted almost in a daze. He would get so inside himself when he worked.
Tell me about my father.
He always hated it that it was Margaret's money that supported the 3 of you when his painting couldn't. I kept telling him, try something more cheerful, like a landscape or 2. But he couldn't do it. His work was just too dark and disturbing for the public.
Ja, das
Wir haben
Bild
ja
in
ein
dem
Bild.
Buchladen. Ja.
Genau, wir haben ein Bild von Ihnen.
Tell me about my father.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Okay.
Mama.
Tell me about my mother.
The Templetons are all gone now. Every last one of them. They never wanted anything to do with us, of course. What a waste.
Tell me about my mother.
I don't know what else to tell.
Na gut.
Have you baked any of your incredible molasses pies lately?
No, dear. But you let me know when you want some, and I'll whip up half a dozen.
Ach, Omi leiden. So. Noch irgendwas vielleicht?
What can you tell me about St. John's
Eve.
Eve?
I haven't celebrated it in years, Gabriel.
Naja, das hatten wir schon. Noch was über dich,
Tell me
Oma?
about yourself.
Ich glaube, das ist der Unterort,
What
ne?
more do you want to know,
Ach ja.
dear?
Ja, ist okay.
Oh, nothing. Never mind.
Oh,
Okay. Ja. Okay, vielleicht hier noch was?
What do you know about...
oh, Gabriel. Nothing. And I don't want
Okay, das hatten wir auch. Ja gut, Oma. Omilein. Omilein?
Gabriel doesn't
Nah,
want to upset
kann
his
ich verstehen.
grandmother with that photograph.
Ja.
Guck dir da die Sachen mal lieber an.
On the wall are portraits of Gran and Gramps when they were young. Gabriel's inherited some good-looking genes. On the wall,
Der Strickkorb.
Granny's knitting. She whips through that stuff like there was no tomorrow. The magazines in the bin includes issues of Southern Living, Ladies' Home Journal, and Macars. Granny likes soft
Das heißt, die
light.
Lampen kannst du anklicken.
Granny likes fresh
Und die
carnations.
Blumen.
Granny's
Und die
favorite.
Treppe?
The stairs lead up to the attic.
Ja, dann gehen wir da mal hoch.
To use the stairs, Gabriel has only to walk on.
Das ist irgendwie nett.
I'm going to go up to the attic, Gran.
Be careful of the dust.
Okay. Sonst noch was?
Na dann.
Ist das Gefährlichste da oben? Okay. Vieles.
That box of knickknacks has been up there for at least 5 years.
Okay, wir versuchen mal einiges zu nehmen.
There's nothing I want in there.
Was ist das?
Gabriel doesn't want to take the clock.
Okay.
It looks pretty heavy.
The trunk doesn't operate.
It looks pretty heavy.
Na,
It looks...
The lid is blocked by the
oh,
clock.
nehmen es doch
Also.
weg. Wegpushen. Aha. Aha. Guck mal rein.
The trunk contains some old clothes, including a pair of leather shorts.
Aren't those called lederhosen?
Oh!
Da sind wir doch Deutsch hier.
Oh!
More of Harrison Knight German book.
Just what I need.
Geil.
And a bundle of letters. Love letters
Oh.
between Harrison and Rebecca.
Süß.
I don't think there's anything in that trunk that would interest anybody but my gran.
Okay.
I think I'll leave that up here.
Ist das hier im Buch
The
gegeben?
brass bed frame is from God knows where. There's a sketchbook on the chair that Gabriel vaguely remembers as his father's.
I think I'll take that sketchbook with me.
Das gucken wir uns direkt mal an.
Gabriel looks fondly at his father's sketchbook and charcoal pencil.
Oh, wow.
Images haunt the pages of Philip Knight's sketchbook, the way they must have haunted his mind. The images touch a deep
irgendwie.
chord in Gabriel. So familiar
Immer
are
so
they
Teufel
that
und
he
Schlange.
finds it
und-
hard to
Leopard und so.
believe they aren't from his own subconscious.
Aber das ist doch die Uhr, ne? Da musst du für die...
Images haunt the page.
Du musst was mit der Uhr machen.
Ich hätte das jetzt nicht als Uhr erkannt, aber ja, doch, kann sein. Achso, hier. Okay. Was haben wir denn noch so?
It's an old, dusty bicycle tire.
Wir versuchen jetzt alles zu nehmen.
I think I'll leave that up here.
Was ist das?
I think I'll leave that up here. I think I'll leave...
Lichterkette.
I think I'll...
Okay, doch.
Gabriel has seen these ornaments every year at Christmas for as long as he can remember. It's a lady's hat from the 1920s.
From Grand's Virginia Woolf period.
Na,
No. No. I think I'll leave that...
was ist das denn?
It's an old metal tub full of dust and
Sieht aus wie so ein
cobwebs.
Pipi-Töpfchen.
It's an old dress dummy that Gran had in her sewing room years ago.
My first impression of the female
Okay.
form.
Grandma's attic is a storehouse of forgotten treasures and useless junk. It's an
Ja.
old...
Was ist das?
That must have been the year Granddaddy caught Santa on the roof.
Grandma's attic is a storehouse of forgotten treasures and useless junk.
Was soll das sein?
Ja, so von Rudolf-mäßig, ne? Aber die Uhr kicke ich noch nicht.
Achso, ja, die Uhr ist gemeint.
Gabriel doesn't want to take the clock. The clock won't... An elaborate mechanical clock, probably of German origin, is among the discarded
Das ist bestimmt
treasures
von
of the
Opa, er
attic.
ist deutsch.
It doesn't seem to be running at the moment. The hands do not appear to have any mechanical function other than to move.
Das irgendwie aufmachen?
Gabriel does... The clock won't open down. The clock... The key does...
Okay.
Nothing happens.
Ah, da musst du lösen. Ja.
The hands...
Okay, aber das weiß ich ja jetzt noch nicht, ne?
The face of the face...
Okay. Okay, so kann man die verstellen. Whee!
Und diese Dinger und drum ist so ein Schwert,
Ja,
eine
stimmt.
Sonne und irgendwas.
Ja.
Kannst du die drucken?
Ah. Okay. Ach
Das
so,
war
so,
ganz
man
rein.
kann die... Okay, verstehe. Puh. Ja.
Ich erkenne nicht mal, was diese Symbole sind.
Also ja, eine Sonne oder eine Sonnenfinsternis und ein Schwert und ein Mann und
Eine Schlange?
ist das eine Schlange? Nee,
Das
weiß
ist
ich
auf
nicht.
den Kopf, das hier, ne?
Ach so, ja.
Dreht das nochmal, dass es so oben ist.
Ach. Okay. Das ist so ein Vogel oder was? Oder? Hä? Nein.
Vogel, weiß ich nicht. Das ist ein Drache.
Ach, ein Drache und ein Engel? Engel und Teufel.
Ah.
Und was ist,
Wie war nochmal der...
Schwert und
Den...
Galgen?
Das Gedicht von Opa.
Oh,
Da musst du
gute
nochmal
Frage.
lesen gehen.
Okay.
Why move that part of the clock?
Ich will weg. So. Ich möchte... Ah. Ja, okay.
Du weißt, was ich meine? Jetzt wissen wir, dass Opa
Ja, der
hat
hat...
Gedichte geschrieben.
Ja.
Und wir haben den gelesen mit so und so viele Drachen.
Ja,
in den so und so.
stimmt. Ja. Richtig, ein etwas düsteres Gedicht. Ja, stimmt. Wir müssen das nochmal lesen.
If I want to open up,
Tschüss, Oma.
Also.
well, Gran, I better
Nicht
get
ohne Tschüss
going.
sagen.
All right, dear.
Ciao, ciao, Oma.
Das ist doch ein guter Junge. Franzosenviertel. Aber wir wollen doch... Wie komme ich denn? Mississippi?
Please select a
Was? Achso, das ist das.
Ah,
Okay,
wir wollen,
verstehe,
ja.
verstehe. Gut, dann gehen wir nochmal... Oh, ist das neu, oder? Nee, das ist die
Friedhof
Kirche.
wahrscheinlich, ne?
Der Friedhof, ja genau. Okay.
Phew, it's humid out there. Made it back though.
Oh, George.
Hör ich deine Spur Sarkasmus?
The top shelf contains a set of
okay.
German books. The books
Lies das nochmal, bitte.
Gabriel selects a volume of German.
Und dann...
Drei
Drei
Drachen.
3 Drachen.
3 Drachen kriechen in meinen Schlaf. Die Ziele wollen sie lebendig zum Fraß. Feurigen Atems, gespaltener Zunge, genießen sie jedes Mal.
Ja, dann kannst du Drache 3 Uhr machen.
Ja. Wird dann wohl so sein. Vielleicht.
Wenn das nicht klappt, dann sei nicht besser.
Nein.
I'm out of here. Try not to sell out the store while I'm gone.
Have fun.
Nochmal auf zu Oma, das ging ja schnell.
Ja, aber ich wusste nicht mehr, wie viele Drachen.
Ja, 3, ja. Okay. Ding dong! Arme Oma.
Wir haben uns mega viel Mühe gegeben. mit
Ja,
dem Spielen, ne?
total.
Precious boy.
Ich finde das super.
How wonderful of you to stop by.
Eigentlich kann man hier Stunden zubringen, allein das Wohnzimmer zu begutachten, ne?
Ja, ne?
And stay away from
Und die
me,
Gespräche
Gran.
sind auch sehr ausführlich. Ne?
Ja.
Make yourself at home, son.
Vielen Dank für die Empfehlung.
Ja. Kam von diversen Leuten.
Ich habe auch gehört, es gibt mehrere Teile sogar. Ne?
Und es gibt auch ein Remake hiervon.
Ui.
Mhm.
Tschüss, Oma.
There is nothing.
Oma, ich muss noch mal...
I'm going up the attic
Pass auf den
again.
Staub auf.
Enjoy yourself, dear.
Ja, ja.
Okay. So, Öhrchen. Ja, das den nochmal benutzen. Ja, irgendwie. Okay, Drachen. Was ist das der Drache? Geh. So. Und jetzt...
The face of the clock.
Come on.
The face.
Danke. No. Nein.
Immer einen Schlüssel.
The
Nein.
key. Nothing happened.
Dann packt die Drachen 12. Nochmal einen Schlüssel. Okay.
Das ist so
So wie Sibirien.
bisschen.
Granddaddy, you
Oh, mein schlauer Gast wusste es.
Na gut, 3 Drachen war schon, war schon eine gute Richtung.
Ja, aber überhaupt darauf zu kommen, dass das mit der Uhr und ja.
Aber ich glaube, es ist, weil das Spiel gut gemacht ist, weil die Tatsache,
Gabriel doesn't want.
dass ein Mann namens Ritter hat irgendwelche deutsche Gedichte
Ja,
mal geschrieben.
ja, ja.
Und dann hier in den Haus von Opa Knight steht so eine Uhr mit einem Drache.
Und Harrison ist jetzt nicht unbedingt ein deutscher Name, ne?
Ja, das ist ja doch Henry Ritter.
The letter is addressed
Heinz
to
Ritter.
Ritter,
Was
wer immer
sag
das
ich
sein
denn?
mag.
whoever that is.
Ja. Okay,
Ja, unser
gibt's-
Opa wird das sein. So.
The single sheet.
Okay. Die lesen.
The letter is written in German, but Gabriel determines what he can about it. It was sent from a place called Schloss Ritter in Rittersburg,
Keine Ahnung, wo
West
das ist.
Germany. The letter is addressed to mein Sohn Heinz and signed Wilhelm Ritter. One of the recurring words strewn throughout the letter is the word Schattenjäger. The only thing that Gabriel can decipher about the letter is a sense of urgency in the handwriting and in the heavy use of quill-tipped bold strokes and underlining.
Okay. Dann guck dir mal das Foto an.
The old photographs show Gabriel's
Bestimmt die
grandfather with 2 other men that Gabriel has not identified.
Vielleicht sind das die Brüder, die Verschollenen.
The old
Okay. Okay, vielleicht fragen wir Oma.
Ja. Was wird Oma uns hier zusagen können?
Was hat Großpapa so getrieben in seiner Jugend?
Und was werden wir in Friedhof finden? Das und vieles mehr.
Erfahren wir in der nächsten Folge.